The Hells Angels often live a life full of danger and riots, even within the ranks of their club. From the US to Europe for decades, violent battles have raged among the Hells Angels, between different chapters, but also within these chapters. The battle for power is real, and their goal is simple: to hope to avoid death altogether, as long as they are not a target by any other criminal. This is the shocking story of the most feared Hells Angel in Europe. Although they hope to avoid death and make the right decision, disaster struck for one of the most feared and notorious Hells Angels in history. His demise is imminent. He is so notorious and feared that even gang bosses are afraid of his authority and influence. The legendary boss of the Hells Angels. Chapter in Hanover, Germany, Frank Hainbuch, not only controls the local nightlife scene, but his influence has even extended into the middle class and even upper class society. As a former professional boxer, he formed the epitome of the Hells Angels chapter in Germany. But there is more. With his power, he has established a vast empire of pubs, brothels, and sports studios. During the years, he had cultivated strong connections with civil society. Everyone knows Hainbuch, and no one wants to face the consequences of what might happen if you have him against you. His popularity showed when he got married in the summer of 2017, just outside of Hanover in Germany. This wasn't just an ordinary wedding, it was a folk festival with musicians, loads of people, and of course a lot of food and alcohol. Frank Hainbuch was a force to be reckoned with. Why? He has the rare ability to be both a gangster and a likable person who could be anyone's friend. However, the scene has undergone significant changes in recent years, and Frank Hainbuch has not emerged unscathed. Nevertheless, he remains a prominent figurehead of the club, and undoubtedly the most recognizable member in Germany. But how did he gain his power, and what exactly happened in the last years? Let's dive straight into this remarkable and unique story. Hainbuch served as the intermediary between the dark, criminal underground and the upper-class bourgeoisie. And to achieve this, he had an important layer standing next to him to make it all happen. No one other than Götz Werner von Fromberg. He also served as the best man to Gerhard Schroeder, the former German lobbyist and politician who held the position of Chancellor of Germany from 1998 to 2005. He was a huge name in the business. Under his mediation, the Hells Angels even concluded a peace treaty with the rival Bandidos, an experienced lawyer with an impressive track record, and also a person to fear if you have him against you. But Hainbuch wanted to do things differently. He decided to create this unique Hells Angels experience for all members, even with its own brands of beer and cigarettes. An elite club within the Hells Angels, a way to distinguish themselves from other chapters. A sign that Hainbuch is the prominent leader, claiming his power and ability to lead. In no time, he had also become a prominent figure in the nightlife scene, attracting thousands of people to parties in the red light district. Because of his connections in the upper class, the local authorities even supported these events. Even policemen weren't allowed to intrude in these events. This says it all. It shows his power and ties with the upper class and authorities. Although it seems like this was a recipe for disaster, according to some sources, the presence of Hainbuch and his control created a peaceful and safe environment for all people present. This showed when Hainbuch was in jail later, and the district was flooded with Lebanese, Russian, and Albanian gangs attacking each other on the open street every day. Later, when Hainbuch got out of prison, everything went back to normal, and all the clubs were safe again. As simple as that. Even these foreign gangs feared him and knew about his power and notoriety. This shows the power of Hainbuch and his ability to control literally everything. But his presence and dominance were also very important for Germany and Hanover. Economically, he has established a strong presence in this area, making it challenging to diminish his influence. Was this all part of his plan? He infiltrated all layers of society, surrounding him with a powerful layer, making him an essential figure, not only for the Hells Angels, but also for Hanover and the area. But the question arises, will Frank Hainbuch continue to enjoy unrestricted freedom to move around Germany in the future? How far does his power stretch? Is he really untouchable? And more importantly, how will he address the ongoing internal tension within the Hells Angels? Will he be open to compromise, or will he fiercely defend his position as the most powerful Hells Angel in Europe, showing no mercy? But the fierce battle for power isn't just between members of the Hells Angels, but also with other motorcycle clubs, like the Bandidos. The clash between the Hells Angels and the Bandidos is one of brotherhoods and brutal violence, with both sides fighting for dominance and territory. And both motorcycle clubs are beyond relentless. They will cross any boundary to emerge victorious, leaving behind a trail of bloodshed and destruction. And there is no end in sight. It seems that this intense rivalry isn't cooling down anytime soon. This intense rivalry and war between the Hells Angels and Bandidos erupted in 2007. In this war, investigators also targeted Hainbuth as the leader of the Hells Angels. During this time, the Hells Angels recruited a bunch of young men to join forces to back them up. The more notorious and vicious these members, the better. But this strategy would soon backfire on Hainbuth as they recruited someone who would change everything. One of these recruits was Stefan R., who later became a notorious killer. In 2022, a German court sentenced Stefan R. to life in prison for murdering a man he met on an online dating site. The judge in Berlin said that Stefan had killed the electrical engineer to act out his fantasies of cannibalism. I will spare you the horrible details, but it shows what kind of people they recruited to defeat the Bandidos. But recruiting Stefan R. changed everything. He later snitched on the Hells Angels, becoming a key witness in exchange for a reduced sentence for his involvement in human trafficking. According to Stefan R.'s testimony, the missing Turkish Tekin B had allegedly been tortured and brutally executed by the Hells Angels in a car repair shop. However, there was no evidence to support his claims, and it was later revealed that the witness was unreliable. Before a raid on Hainbuth's estate, other police authorities had already warned about this. During the raid, the GSG-9, the elite special forces unit of the German Federal Police, shot his dog, just to stir the pot, to make it clear that all eyes were on Hainbuth. It became pretty clear to Hainbuth that he is grappling with power struggles within his gang as well. The betrayal from within his own ranks and the constant pressure from law enforcement could mean the end of his position and the Hells Angels chapter. Hainbuth's life hangs in the balance. But how far is he willing to go to protect his status, wealth, authority, and prestige? And what risks is he prepared to take? Therefore, in 2013, he did the unthinkable and left Germany. He moved from Hanover to Majorca, the Spanish island in the Mediterranean Sea. Speculation suggests that the leader of the Hells Angels grew weary of the cold and dreary streets of Hanover and sought a fresh start with a new venture. However, one cannot help but wonder if the allure of beautiful weather, palm trees, and sandy beaches was the sole motivation behind Hainbuth's relocation. Could this be yet another calculated move to amass more wealth, power, and glory? Will his arrival on the Spanish island ignite international conflicts and bloodshed in Europe's most renowned party city? The sunny beaches of Majorca appeared to be the ideal setting for him to further establish his reign of terror, far away from the prying eyes of law enforcement. However, Hainbuth's plans did not unfold precisely as he had envisioned. Yet again, he faced unseen challenges he had to deal with. It didn't take long after he arrived at the beautiful island of Majorca that he got arrested by the Spanish police at a friend's place. Moving from Germany to Spain didn't give him a free pass to run away from his past and actions. The police arrested Hainbuth. The charges ranged from money laundering to drug trafficking and even to prostitution. Serious allegations. He ends up in custody and leaves behind a power vacuum among the Hells Angels in Germany. Who is going to take over his role as leader, or will he be able to somehow keep on reign from his Spanish jail? It took the Spanish authorities more than 3 years to investigate this case, but surprisingly enough, the authorities do not have enough evidence to charge Hainbuth for these crimes. In 2016, he was allowed to travel back to Hanover, Germany, to celebrate his 50th birthday. A memorable event for Hainbuth and another turning point. Back home, Frank Hainbuth is welcomed by hundreds of Hells Angels, friends, families, and even business partners. Everyone seemed to be happy that Hainbuth was back to where he belonged. Hainbuth moved forward straight away and started his journey as a pub landlord. But the main question remained: will he be able to reclaim his power and status as the prominent figure he once was? During this period, the power struggle within the biker scene enters its next phase. Will Hainbuth's return to Hanover mark the beginning of a new era of Hell's Angels dominance? Or will his adversaries finally succeed in permanently bringing him down? We all know that brotherhood is one of the core values of the Hell's Angels, and they use violence against anyone who snitches on them or betrays their trust of the principles of the motorcycle club. However, the true extent of this brotherhood is often questioned. What happens when wealth and power take precedence over honor and principles, even surpassing the value of another Hell's Angel's life? A former hooligan from East Berlin discovers firsthand that the bonds within rocker brotherhoods are not always as strong as they seem. During this time, their president, Holger Bossen, also known as Hako, holds immense power within the club. However, in 2008, he was expelled for allegedly embezzling money. Bossen seeks to rejoin the club, but Andre Sommer, another powerful Hell's Angels member, is determined to prevent his return. It is rumored that Hako had stolen from the club, leading to his expulsion, and then Bossen decided to take action. On June 10, 2012, an armed killer carrying a Sig Sauer 9mm firearm headed towards Zingsterstrasse in the Hohenschönhausen district of East Berlin, the place where the president always parked his motorcycle. All of a sudden, Oleg Tsaryov, a 36-year-old Ukrainian entrepreneur with pro-Russian affiliations, emerges from the bushes during the gunfire. The initial shot narrowly misses his heart, grazing his pericardium instead. Subsequent shots penetrated his chest, causing significant damage to the 400-pound man. Surprisingly, he remains conscious and fortunate as the vital blood vessels remain unharmed. However, the next shot, aimed at his abdomen and liver, narrowly avoids the abdominal aorta by a mere 2 centimeters. The final life-threatening shot strikes his severely injured body in the 12th thoracic vertebra, narrowly avoiding severing his spinal cord by a single centimeter. Paralysis would have been the result if the shot had landed slightly further. The individuals responsible for this heinous act are Holger Bossen and Michael W., also known as Russian Michael. Bossen has confessed to the investigators, admitting his involvement in the crime. Allegedly, they intended to teach Sommer a lesson. As a consequence, Holger Bossen has been sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for attempted incitement to murder. Holger Bossen is said to have committed the attack as revenge, but it is not clear exactly why. It was initially thought that Sommer had fallen victim to a feud between the Hell's Angels and the rival motorcycle club Bandidos. Tensions have been running high since the beginning of 2012, and the police are still afraid that the case will escalate completely. Remarkably, Andre Sommer makes a surprising recovery from this brutal attack and even gains a higher reputation than before. However, this incident raises questions about the internal dynamics of the Hell's Angels motorcycle club. When individual disputes escalate into larger conflicts within the club, how far will veteran members go to protect their power against newcomers? Furthermore, how many violent individuals are needed to orchestrate a coup within the organization? Over the past decade, a significant number of men with a migrant background have joined the Hell's Angels. In the Frankfurt chapter, Aygun Mukuk, a Turkish member, is among the first to have foreign roots. Leading the Frankfurt Angels is Walter Burkhard, known as Schnitzel Walter, due to his past as a butcher. He has allegedly amassed wealth through underground activities, relying on a combination of street smarts and ruthlessness. In 2014, Aygun Mukuk gathered dissatisfied rockers around him, intending to establish his own branch of the Angels. At first, Walter doesn't have any problems with Mukuk's plans to grow. Soon, though, he changes his mind, and he decides not to give Mukuk the lucrative bouncer jobs at brothels and clubs. Things get worse until there is a fight at Frankfurt's Katana Club. Mukuk is in charge of 40 men who storm the building. One of Schnitzel's men shoots at Mukuk, who miraculously lives, according to a police investigation that follows. The Angels also fire guns, which has never happened before, but is said to be harmless. There are going to be disagreements in Mukuk's group, just like there are in any big family. A fight breaks out at the door. Mukuk's main source of power is in the immigrant community, where he has formed new gangs like the Guerrilla Nation and the Ottomans. At a fighting match in Offenbach, he shows off his connections in public. Good people always make good friends, right? We know them and everyone else. The cops call these groups of guys rocker-like and see them as Mukuk's insurance. With these men on Mukuk's side, he can increase the size and presence of his own forces without publicly accepting them as members. This lets him avoid the rules that go along with it, like having to help out in case of fights, accidents, or detentions. In 2016, the famous World Meeting of the Hells Angels also talked about Mukuk. In Warsaw, Hells Angels from all over the world got together to talk about the club's future. In particular, they talked about what Aygun Mukuk did, who is said to have broken the club's rules again. But Mukuk is now freed, and when he does, he greets police officers who know the scene, even though the Rockers' rules say that doing so is absolutely forbidden. There is a rule that says you can't talk to the police in any way, but it looks like Mukuk doesn't follow it, which makes the older members of the Hells Angels clubs very angry. Mukuk just won't be punished and doesn't care about the Hells Angels' long-standing rules. In Berlin, Mukuk goes to the funeral of the leader of the new gang Guerrilla Nation. It doesn't worry Mukuk at all that this gang is in direct competition with the Berlin Hells Angels and has even fought with them. As a Hells Angel from the Frankfurt area, Mukuk isn't allowed to look for followers in Berlin because it gets in the way of the Berlin Angels' work. Still, Mukuk leads the Berlin funeral parade with courage. The rocker boss spends 20 minutes at the graveyard, which gives him plenty of time to think about his own death. The 35-year-old was shot 17 times at a very close range. It is no surprise that he didn't survive this gruesome attack. And what makes things even more mysterious is the fact that to this day, the murder remains unsolved. The lesson? If you want to play with the big guys, always watch your back in case you have made some enemies along the way. The entry of members like Aygun Mukuk, emblematic of the changing landscape within the Angels, further complicated the already volatile club dynamics. Mukuk's rule-breaking and bold maneuvers highlighted a shift in traditional codes, creating rifts that threatened the club's long-standing norms.